Right, Dave, people do love to hear about punters getting one over on the bookies. Hopefully you've got some memorable winning days you can tell us about.
Well, sadly, Simon, I've not got the mega jackpot up just yet, but we've nicked a nice few quid down sort of recent years. A couple of years ago, I think it was October 2015. I think it was sort of everything clicked, landed a couple of multiples and sort of 15-16 grand just pinged into an account. But most memorable would probably be being taken to Sitting Bull, Central Park, by my dad, and we'd gone there a couple of times because they were running opens and Dad had had a few dogs on the card, so we'd gone for like the whole meeting and sort of just watching dogs. And I think we had sort of 7 bets and 6 of them had clicked, and the on-course firms were not happy. They were like, "You're not going to be back next week." And we did take a nice few quid for sort of an 18-year-old who was, at uni and not earning a lot of money working in a betting shop. That was a nice night, sort of almost 4 figures. I mean, that was a lot of money to me back then. But I mean, the 16 grand from an Irish online firm was lovely, and I'm still driving the car now that was bought with that money.
Well, it's great to hear about winning days, but you know that some people love to hear about people's bad luck. Has there been any that got away?
There have been a few, Simon. Recently as well, actually, sort of a few line bets running up on a dog at Crayford. I should know the name of that dog, but it's escaping me at the moment. It was basically a missed break, showing all sorts of speed and beating half a length for about 30 odd grand. So that was one that got away. You could say that. I mean, we nicked a few quid, but that was for the absolute crown jewels. And it's very rarely that I would kind of have a bet that would come to that amount of money, just because how I bet and the multiples that I have. It would have to be a lot of money on and quite a few dogs in the line bet as well. But yeah, that one that sticks to mind, although the name of the dog escapes me at the moment. I'm sure it will come back at some point. But yeah, there've been loads. I mean, you ask any person who regularly punts on ground racing, and you very, very quickly forget the ones that you get right, but you always remember the ones that you get right but went wrong. There's been many a time where you just need a dog to do it right at the third bend or coming off the last, and they can find trouble. And there are a few dogs out there that you can follow off a cliff. Anyone who watches the channel RPG TV, we've got a few of them that run on the show sort of weekly. There was a dog at Crayford, Monaghy Champ, that I think went 35 races without winning, and then he won sort of 2 or 3 within the space of a month. So it can send your skin back in the eye catchers, but there have been plenty of near misses, definitely.
So if you're at the track and you've got the last one for a Yankee, and then all of a sudden you see it and you think, oh no, I want to get out of this, I don't want to be on. Is there ever an event like that? Is there anything you look for that would put you off wanting to be on that dog?
I'm assuming you mean in sort of where a horse would sweat up on parade, or is there anything physically negative about a dog? And I swear I think ground racing is a little bit different from horse racing, is that I think the dogs are sort of accustomed to running, being on parade and going into the traps and racing is something they've become very familiar with, because the graders will race once a week. Your open race dogs will trial and race throughout the year, and not really. You do get the odd dog bark. An odd dog would refuse to parade and have to be carried to the traps, but it doesn't mean they're reluctant to race. A lot of the time it just means they're lazy, the ones that are have to carry to parade. So yeah, there's not really. My money would already be on. I'm never one to cash out or look to get out of a bet, and I've never seen anything in a dog on parade that would really want to put me off being on.
Now you mentioned that you've had a few good winning days at dog tracks. I've also heard through the grapevine that you won a nice few quid off a certain firm at Towster. Did you get involved with the Greyhound Derby?
That was a great night. Not well, obviously we backed a few winners, but it was a great night. First night at Toast. I mean, wasn't quite sure how it was going to go. I was working for Sky Sports Greyhounds, and we was in the ring, and it was just crazy. And I was almost having to sort of go to Lofty, who was working the bag for Ben and the Star Sports team, like at the side really. I couldn't even get into the ring. We was trying to report, and I think we managed to back 5 or 6 winners, which Lofty wasn't so happy about. I mean, I think they made a nice few quid on the day, but the ring was like nothing I've ever seen before at a dog track. And those that do kind of mention the good old days, I'd imagine that night at Toast was probably what it was like. I mean, spoken to Ben, I think he mentioned that the average stake per bet was about 80 quid, which is frightening really, for how busy the ring was. And yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it again next year, and hopefully we can back a few winners again. Yeah, because we did take Ben and Lofty for a nice few quid.
You do get involved with competitions like that, anti-post?
Yes, a lot of people in the game are a bit reluctant to get involved in anti-post. I'm a massive anti-post better, especially on the Derby. I think purely as a numbers game, get each way terms first 4. If you get to the final, you're drawing the place part already, and now it's a tremendous feat for a greyhound to reach a Derby final. But I think there is a lot of juice in the outright book, sort of in the weeks leading up. William Hill used to do a tremendous concession that if your dog got knocked out in the first round, you got your money back as a free bet to go again, and that was tremendous. I'd always try and get a nice few quid on each way with those guys, but it's the each way terms, but it does come with a health and wealth warning. I backed 7 dogs for the Derby last year, and 3 sadly didn't make it through injury leading up to the Derby. So the juice is out there, but you do sometimes have to tread carefully, and I probably got a little bit too heavily involved last year.
Is there a special characteristic or a tick list that you're looking for to back something to win the Greyhound Derby?
Durability. When through work, we go to kennels, you talk to trainers, you talk to owners, and as I mentioned, it's a tremendous feat for greyhound and trainer for a dog to reach a Derby final. No higher but has reached the last 2 Derby finals, one at Wimbledon and one at Toast. A tremendous achievement from the dog and Haley and Mark Keatley there. And there's 3 runs in a week during the Derby, and then a week break to the Derby final. And the dog, for me, one has to be able to run the track. Now, for a long time we didn't know where the Derby was going to be, and then thankfully sort of Toaster stepped up, and we now know where it's going to be, and that adds a different angle to it for me, because Wimbledon was a fair track, long runs to the corner, decent early speed with, you'd fare well with a nice bit of early boot there. But Toaster for me is like no other track, long swooping straight, bends. The back straight isn't the biggest going, so it is a bit of a gallop, but I mean, for me, Claire's Rocket was arguably the fastest dog in the Derby last year, but just wasn't able to find a stride down the back for me. It wasn't like your Shelbourne Park with a massive back straight, and finding a dog that can run Toaster and run Toaster fast is massive, so durability and the ability to actually run Toaster itself are what I'd be looking for now.
Dave, looking at social media, there seems to be an awful lot of opposition to Greyhound Racing from various quarters, animal welfare people, etc. If one of those was sat in this room with us now, what would you say to try and defend the sport?
There are plenty, Simon, on social media, and very vocal, and a lot of them, I would say, are quite ill-informed. It is quite annoying, if I'm honest. There's a trainer at Henlow at the moment who goes by the name of Jason Bloomfield, and his partner Kelly Winderbank actually used to be an anti Greyhound racer, or someone who was supporting the cause against Greyhound racing. And she used, by her own admission, she would go to protests and what have you, and I think she was invited to a kennel, and she wasn't even aware that when racing goes on, there's a vet on site at all times. There has to be a qualified vet and they have to be happy with the surface. They have to be happy with the condition of each dog as it goes into the kennel. When it comes out of the kennel, it's paraded in front of the vet before they race, and then they're paraded again after they race to make sure everything's okay. And I saw a stat the other day where I think the fatality rate in Greyhound racing is 0.13%. Don't quote me on that, and if it's incorrect you can blame, I think it was Floyd Amphlett, the Greyhound Star, that put that one out. And it was interesting that I think he mentioned that it's a fatality rate lower than in horse racing. Now, I know there are some people out there against horse racing, but there just seems to be this massive fight against Greyhound racing. And sometimes I don't think the sport itself does itself any favours, but there are a lot of ill-informed people out there who, I'd invite anyone to go to a track, speak to a trainer. The one that springs to mind is Kevin Hutton, whose kennel used to be a piggery, if I remember rightly, and you're looking at his kennel and the dogs are all laying on duvets, they're all comfortable, they're all happy, they're looked after. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier on, the guys and girls that look after these dogs are not doing it for the money, they're doing it for the love of the dogs. And it's a way of life, training and looking after dogs, and you appreciate that when you work up close to the sport like I do. You can leave the track, trot off home and off you go to bed, but the guys that are looking after the dogs, they'll load them up onto the van or in the car, take them back to the kennel. They might give them a feed, check them over themselves, make sure they're okay, kennel them back in. They might paddock other dogs, so they might take them out into the paddock. And you forget, as I say, the casual punter or race goer will just leave the track and that's it, job done. But these dogs are looked after meticulously by the people within the sport, and don't for a second think that they're just regarded as the commodity that some would have you think and just tossed away once they're done with, because that's not the case.
So do you think that Greyhound Racing could do a lot more to enhance its own PR?
Yes, definitely. The thing that springs to mind, and I wrote a column in the Racing Post on this a month or two ago, was that when a dog retires, you get sort of this green, they call it the green form, and there is an option on the form in which a dog can be put to sleep on economic grounds. So the dog might have sustained an injury and it be deemed sort of economically better that the dog will be put to sleep rather than the treatment be paid for. And I've banged on about how the dogs are looked after, etc, etc, but until we get rid of that part of the form, those that speak so vehemently against Greyhound racing will always have that, and just getting rid of that is obviously not going to be the answer to it all, but that needs to happen for me. I mean, we're seeing a lot of money being put into the sport now. I know that tracks such as Yarmouth and Kinsley, who receive money from the sort of the bookmakers and their contributions into the fund, they're using all their money from that into rehoming all the dogs that have raced at their track. Now that might be rehoming, treating injuries, and for me, with the media rights deal and what's gone on, and there is more money swirling in the pot, definitely. And I think there's no excuses now for tracks and the promoters not to be looking after the dogs once they're finished racing. So a big thing for me is we lose that euthanasia due to on economic grounds off of that green form. That has to go.
And somebody that's watching this, what would you say to them to say, come and check it out, come dog racing, dip your toe in? How would you sell it to them?
I would sell it to them that you certainly get a lot of bang for your buck when you go dog racing. It's not expensive to get in. If you go to your local track on a Saturday night, I'm sure there'll be some kind of deal where you can get a free bet, a free beer, and maybe a free meal with your race card and entry. But the action's sort of fast and furious. The dogs are looked after, and we've got a race every 15 minutes. Get yourself outside into the betting ring, see some of the characters about there, and enjoy yourself. Get stuck in and come back the week after. That's one thing that the game is suffering from at the moment, is that the casual, the conversion from casual to regular is probably not what it should be.